and clean. So email is everywhere, right? Especially for those of us who are in the Ann Arbor Public Schools District. Everybody has their Google account, everybody has Gmail, we're all on Drive. So this is why it's really important to look at email etiquette, and we're going to give you our top 3 tips to keep your email experience mean-free and clean.
Our first tip is to be polite and say it right. So we don't want you to email angry. If you're emailing a teacher about your grade, wait 24 hours before you press send. This helps you to keep it professional and neutral so that you can really get your point of view across. Here's an example of a really poorly written email. As you can see, the student, first of all, doesn't use proper grammar, and she also seems to attack the teacher and insult the teacher. This is why we think that it's really important to let your emotions simmer down a little bit, and then you can email the teacher.
Our next tip is to be aware of what you share. So you really need to think about privacy before you send an email. And even if you're sending an email to somebody you know and trust, you should never share confidential information. This would include something like a social security number, your internet passwords for anything, or your home address. Another thing to keep in mind when you're sharing an email is the content. You want to keep your message professional and related to whatever you put in the subject line. So you should make sure that if you say you're going to send someone an email about dinner plans tonight, you don't include the message about a basketball game you watched, because that's not what they're expecting to read. Also, you want to pay attention to significance. You shouldn't waste your time or someone else's time by writing an email with something no one cares about. Don't just write about random things that you would skip over if you were reading the email. Also, remember that email is not private. As I mentioned earlier, even if you're sending it to one person you know, that doesn't mean that that's the only person who will have access to that email. Anyone could see it. Here's a bad example that a student sent a teacher. As you can see, the subject line is late homework, but there's really nothing in the body of this email that has anything to do with late homework. In fact, it seems as if this student isn't even really talking about anything that's related to class. This is a lot of information that the teacher does not want or does not need, and this email should not have been sent.
Our final tip is to respond in time. We think it'd be great if you reply to an email within 24 to 48 hours at the very latest. It's important to respond promptly so that your teacher remembers what you are discussing. If you open an email and don't immediately reply, you can just mark it as unread to remind yourself later. It also may be a good idea to write a little note to yourself in your planner or wherever you keep notes to remember to respond to the email. Here's a poor example of a student who waited about 10 weeks to respond to an email. By this time, the teacher probably doesn't even know what the student is talking about.
Help! So if you still aren't sure about something or there's anything these tips didn't cover, don't worry, we still have another tip for you. If there's anything that you're sending in an email and you have kind of a moment of hesitation and you're not sure whether or not you should include that, don't include it in your email. If you just want to table it for then and wait a moment, you can always find an adult or a teacher or someone else who you trust and ask them whether or not they think the content is appropriate for the email.
Now you know our email etiquette. Thanks for watching.